Let's hit it. Hootie Hoot Productions presents the Sports Deli Podcast, where everyone deserves a seat at the table, where we discuss the intersection between race and sports, mental health, leadership, and equality. To find out more about the Sports Deli Podcast, check us out online at thesportsdelipodcast.com. We are starting to have free giveaways. If you hear giveaway anywhere in the podcast, send us an email to thesportsdeli@gmail.com with giveaway in the subject heading, and in the body of the email, give us the answer to that podcast's specific question.
When you hear someone say, make America great again, the first question you have is, well, when was America great?
What I would say about Tom
Brady, yeah.
If you don't want to be in this fight, then don't put a Make America Great hat up in your locker. Silently now, it appears that you are with the other group. Just don't get in the way.
Yeah. Stephen A. Smith is my alter ego. Go somewhere else with that
shit. John, she's roasting your ass.
Colin Kaepernick, he's a hero in the same way that John Carlos and Tommy Smith were heroes.
That when George Floyd called out to his mother, he called out to all mothers, and I heard his call.
So do you have white privilege?
Absolutely. Now we have to be a voice as white people.
About it. African American women last year changed the course of this nation. Women are the backbone, and now we need to support the souls that they stand on.
And now, whether you're folding laundry, driving, exercising, or cooking, grab your favorite deli sandwich or bagel and your favorite beverage, and let's do this together in the Sports Deli. Auntie, take us away. We're so honored on this 29th day of National Courtesy and National Blood Awareness Month to welcome the pride of Cowtown, the fifth largest city in the state of Texas, Fort Worth, the real KD, Khadevis Robinson. The 8-time USA national champion and 2-time Olympian in Athens and London is currently the head cross-country coach at The Ohio State University. His appearance in London, it should be noted, is not only remarkable because of the fact that there was an 8-year gap between his first and second Olympic team, but he accomplished this incredible feat at 35 years of age. Growing up, he loved all sports, but was drawn to football, but only ran track because of the girls and because he broke his wrist in high school. He ran for Texas Christian University and found time to be either a VP, leader, or a member of 4 different clubs, which I find fascinating and envious of, as I always wish I branched out more in college to do more than just play 2 sports in my college days. While at TCU, he did run the 4x4, but he primarily focused on the 800 as a professional. He shares a birthday with Booyah, the late Stuart Scott, and was born the same year as Chauncey Billups, Peyton Manning, and Tim Duncan. He's a mentor, a fitness expert, an author, and a motivational speaker. He co-founded the youth track and running club in Santa Monica. He loves tomatoes and weight training. He preaches Khadivisms, which he will explain later, to help people bring out the best versions of themselves, in part because he was often motivated by famous quotes about not quitting. His parents were very strict about his grades growing up, and he didn't have a car or a phone. He believes that major things happen in minor moments, and his remarkable story of self-discovery and self-worth is about hope, faith, family, and friends. You can find him on his website at Khadevis.com and on Instagram and Twitter at Khadevis, and in the staff directory, I'm sure, at The Ohio State University. Hey, what's up, Coach?
How you doing?
Good, good. Love the picture.
The old picture.
Hey, you earned it.
How you been?
Good, everything's good, man. I'm from Detroit.
The D! The D! As E.T. would say, right?
You know? Listen, check this out. So even though I bleed maize and blue, right, having grown up in Detroit, truly honored that you're joining us here on the Sports Deli, where everyone deserves a seat at the table, and way to get that karma. Don't get it against Michigan.
Won't hold it against you.
So we have a couple things in common. So I ran cross country in high school. Unfortunately, my PR was 1950 for 5K. Not good enough to run for the Ohio State University, but I did run for Lou Scott. And Lou Scott was a member of the 1968 Olympic team. And if you haven't heard his story, I encourage you to listen to the podcast with him. It's a 3-part series. And long story short, he doubled his workouts because he found out what the other Olympic runners were doing in terms of their training, and started running 50 miles a day for 4 straight years. And he had his trials in Reno at elevated sea levels, 20-mile-an-hour winds, and he's going up against someone that's a foot taller than him. And in the last 100 yards, his eyeballs are basically popping out of his head, and he wins by a step. And so when he told us that story on the podcast, it's just a remarkable testament to perseverance. And like you know, you were always a competitive person, you know, you loved football. And so talk about your early influences and what it was like growing up, because I know it wasn't always easy for a lot of reasons, but talk about your upbringing, because I was very fortunate to cross paths with Coach Scott, you know, who was with the John Carloses and Tommy Smiths, and he was a part of the protest, even though he wasn't on stage, obviously protesting, but he was a part of the group that formed during that Olympic Games that ended up blackballing Tommy Smith and John Carlos, and they never had a career ever again, along with the Australian who was vindicated after his death. But all 3 of those guys' careers were ruined.
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, when I look back, I think, you know, everybody's gone through something, right? And so when I was younger, we were poor, and, you know, I was in the hood, or whatever you want to call it, the ghetto, or whatever you want to call it. But you don't know. And I have to say this, those things that you grow through and not just go through is what makes you stronger. What I've realized with being a college coach is that we have a lot of young men and young ladies that come to us and they've never been through anything. They've never encountered an issue or a problem or a hurdle, and they had to overcome it themselves. They've always had maybe a parent, a coach, a teacher, somebody to help them out of it. And that's actually giving them a disservice, because they come to college or they come to the real world, they become adults, and they encounter some tough things, and they panic. It's like a kid that's trying to learn how to walk. And every time they get ready to fall, we catch. So, you know, sometimes we need to let them fall.
So well said. Such a good point. And you know, it's one of those things where you wouldn't wish it on anybody, but since you went through it, you wouldn't be where you are today.
Exactly.
And being able to pay it forward if you hadn't been through those things, and now you're able to give perspective to kids in a way where. And so do you preach, or do you massage it when they're going through a tough time, to allow them organically to be able to learn this new space that's hard for them, either emotionally, or it's a taboo subject like mental health, or, you know, how is it that you help them realize it's going to be okay, but it may just take some time?
Well, you know, the thing is, I'm big on energy. I believe in being real, because, you know, I think you get more out of that. And so for me, you know, I think my student athletes and my friends and the people I mentor or consult with, I like to be real with them. Now, what I have to do is evaluate the type of personality they may have.
Right.
Does that make sense? In other words, what I say is everyone don't take the information the same way. Sometimes you have to meet people where they're at, right?
Yeah, it's not about equality, it's about fairness.
Yeah. And here's the reality, you know.
Give me an example.
The world's not fair.
Give me an example.
The world's not fair.
Right, but give me an example of something that one of your players went through. Not because I want clarification. Are you talking about a PR, or are you talking about a family issue? You said that they haven't been through life. So give me a life issue that's coming into play with sports, and it's impacting their ability to train, focus, and be the best version of themselves, either on the course or in distance running. And so how do you help them get through that?
Let me use this example. A simple example of not believing in yourself. And you say, well, how does that happen? Well, I'm gonna give you an example. There are kids and there are individuals that when they was in high school, they was the best in the state.
Right.
Or one of the best in the state. The state. I didn't say the city. I didn't say the district. I didn't say the region. I said the state. And then you go to college and you're number 4 on the team.
Right.
And see, some people never had that. They've never had to figure out. They've always been the best. They've always had what they needed. This is a life thing. This ain't just sports. Some people get to certain aspects in life where they always had a safety net.
Yeah.
And now they have to encounter real life without the safety net, and they have to come up and figure out a way to believe in themselves.
Interesting.
Without the safety net. So I do a couple of things. Sometimes I tell them, borrow my belief in you until your belief kicks in. Borrow my belief in you until your belief kicks in, right? Other times I tell them to focus on what they can control and not what they can't control. Just small stuff.
Right.
Because see, some of them have never had to do those things. The steps are not right there. It's not a clear path on how you become this.
Right.
Will Smith gave a speech at the Youth Children Award years back. And he said the secret to life and success was reading and running. And he said reading and running because every problem that's ever been presented in the world, someone else has had it. And they've written about it. They've talked about how they overcame that problem or issue. So reading. Then they said, well, what about running? How is running one of the secrets to success? And he said, well, think about it. I don't care if you're Eliud Kipchoge, the greatest marathon, greatest distance runner of all time. I don't care if you're Usain. I don't care who you are. If you run and you run long enough or fast enough, sooner or later, a voice is going to pop in your head and say, slow down or stop. Or why are you running so hard? It's too hot out here. That voice is going to pop in your head and say, why do you got to go 50 miles? Or why you got to go this fast? And if you can defeat that voice, you got it made, because that's the same voice that's going to tell you can't start your own business. That's the same voice that says you can't marry that girl. That's the same voice that's going to say you can't accomplish whatever these goals are that you're trying to accomplish. So you are going to have to be able to defeat that voice or mute that voice.
Let me ask you a question, because I thought I was educated on some of this stuff, but I wasn't. And one of the things that White Fragility talked about and other things that I've read in the last year since the murder of George Floyd was that it's not enough as a white ally to simply be against racism, that we have to be anti-racist. And so that's the next level, is that in your own corners of your homes, in conversations with people, you have to do more than just be yourself. And so looking back on it, do you think he felt complicit? Do you feel like, like JJ Redick or Kyle Korver, where he says now it's not enough just to stand by and just be who I am, which everyone knows I'm not that person, but don't we have to, as white allies, take it a step further because now it's our turn?
Well, I think when you have a platform, so I think if you have a platform in which your opinion that's going to reach so many people and it's going to it can have an influence, I think that helps. And that's not to say someone that doesn't have a big platform shouldn't do anything. I'm not saying that, but there's going to be some people that in their effort to try to help, because that doesn't come natural for them, that maybe they might do a little bit more harm than help. See,
give me an example. Give me an example. What would he say that could harm if he says, I don't want to be complicit anymore? It's
a funny movie, but it's a part on there when the guy who's playing this part, who's a funny part, he says, you people. And it was he didn't mean anything about it. And then the black guy was like, what you mean, you people? And it's like,
I got you.
That's a little small
microaggression. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
he didn't mean it.
Yeah, he didn't mean it like that, but it comes out like that. Now now you got to use a lot of energy to try to get out of that. And
great point. Let me ask you a question. Every time you go around a corner here, I'm ready to ask you another question. First, it was the music, because I'm going to ask you about music, because and how that impacted your life. And then you talked about push-ups, and I'm a big push-up person. If you check out my TikTok, I've done push-up challenges, and I think I did 83 in 60 seconds the other day or whatever. And I can do some push-ups now. Come on. And so now you just talked about suicide. My father committed suicide when I was 9. And so I want to ask you about mental health, because there's a couple different reasons I want to ask about that, because in the Black and brown community, mental health for a long time has been taboo, or you get roasted. And then the other thing is the culture on college campuses have changed. Not just from a social injustice standpoint, but caring about the total student. And I think track and cross country are different than football and basketball. So let me just start off by saying that I think there's been a concern for the entire person in a different way than there's always been for the traditional mainstream sports. But how are you navigating those spaces to the parents and to the kids, that you don't just care about their PRs, their personal record, the best times they can have, and you care about them as a whole person and their experience on campus as a whole? Because as I said in the intro, you were a part of 4 different clubs, and you did other things while you were in school. You didn't just run and that was it. You really had the total experience, as a student athlete.
Let me say this. When I didn't get recruited a lot out of high school. I didn't get a lot of scholarships. I had to take out loans. I didn't take a lot of, I took one official visit, and that was to TCU, and that's where I went.
Wow.
I wasn't on a full scholarship. So
that's amazing.
People ask me, why did I pick TCU? And here's the honest to God truth.
Sponsored by Moolah Kicks. Moolah is MOOLAH, like money, moolah, and kicks like shoes, one word. You can find them online at moolahkicks.com. And it's the first ever female-only brand basketball shoe. So it's a shout out to the basketball street culture, and it is also about fighting social injustice and gender inequality worldwide and here in the United States. And again, you can find them at moolahkicks.com. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli.
The guy who recruited me was named John McKenzie. I still talk to him. We talk at least once a week to this day. And I could feel that he was going to be a person that I'll be talking to this day, some 20 years later, almost 30 years later. That's my philosophy with coaching. I truly believe coaching is an extension of the family.
Yeah.
So my philosophy of coaching is a bit different, I think, because you got to have results and you have to produce, but also I think
that's a given.
Because I think I understand the influence a coach can have on an individual's life.
Yeah. And
the reason is, before I got married, I called Coach McKenzie. Before I bought I bought a couple of houses. Before I bought all my houses, I've called him. Every big major decision I've made, I've asked him for advice. So to me, that's the type of relationship I like having with my athletes. And let me tell you something. Some of them don't like it. Sometimes you got
some of them don't.
Some hard truths. Sometimes you got some hard truths, and they're not going to like it. And I've had this experience where I've had to be straight up with some kids about some real stuff, and they didn't like it, and they didn't talk to me for a year or two. And then I've had some and they've come back 3 to 4 years and say, Coach Robinson, I want to thank you for having that conversation with me, because I couldn't see it then, but I can see it now.
You see things that maybe other people wouldn't see because you're introspective, and you can say, hey, are you okay? Do you need to talk to somebody? Because I'm worried about you.
You can say that. Yeah. And then you find
sports psychologist or a regular psychologist or whatever it is.
The right people to reach out to, because, I'm gonna tell you something. The whole mental health and emotional vibrations and the emotional things that individuals are going through, kids are going through, adults are going through now, is something that we can no longer sweep. Because there's different types of being down and depressed, right? And I'm not a doctor, I'm just saying, if you have, we're going through COVID, and I had a couple, I know some people that have passed. So there's a sadness that comes from losing someone you love, or, failing on some test, or not, whatever that may be, which is grieving or whatever. And then there's this other that can be chemical, right? Like you just down and you don't know, like everything's good. Like you done made A's on all your tests. You got a boyfriend or girlfriend.
Great
You
point.
got supporting families, and you're just sad, right? So
Right.
I guess what I'm saying
And it's
is
real.
like,
and it's real.
no, it's real. That's what I'm saying. It ain't
Right.
like
But and a lot of times in certain communities, it was like, not talked about, like you're mentioning, and it's taboo to talk about it. So then you're really stuck.
yeah, but think about it this way though. There's one thing. It's one thing to say you can't talk about it or it's taboo to talk about it, but it's another thing to say some people just don't know what to say. You want to say something or you want to ask, but you don't really know, because that person y'all have never been in a situation where they let you in that way.
Right.
You see?
Yeah.
So
Great point.
or they hide it. We all wear masks. We all wear masks. And we're all good at hiding stuff. That's just human nature. So I think what needs to happen now, because everyone says you got to communicate. Yes, you got to communicate. But I think what needs to happen now is we have to start, we're humans, and we have to start trusting our gut. We know sometimes you have a friend or you have somebody and something, you can feel it.
Yeah.
It's like something's not right.
Yeah.
And typically there are signs. We'll say something happening, we'll say, man, that was odd when I think back on it, right? But nowadays, which is a little bit different than before, you didn't have the same type of access to someone because you didn't have the internet, you didn't have all that. But nowadays, the internet and TV and all that, it distracts us. And it tricks us even more because you can look on an Instagram page. Most people don't put no sad, ugly stuff on their Instagram or Twitter or Facebook page. They put the most happy when they're out in Hawaii, the best clothes, the best picture. So you might be tricked into thinking that everything's great.
Right. But
So
see, we're not taught as young kids. Our education system is flawed in a lot of ways: financial literacy, ethics, and intuition. And trusting your intuition and having these open and honest conversations, maybe not with your teachers, but to encourage people that it's okay to navigate these spaces from a young age. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means that you're trying to be a better version of yourself and that we're all flawed, but that's not taught until we're older. And then we're running away from those things because it scares us or it's so uncomfortable that we just think, like to your point earlier, let's just sweep it under the carpet and hope that it goes away. And it's never going to work out that way.
No, but here's the thing. So how can I say this? It's like those are things in which that you just do. What I mean by that is, I don't know if we wait for it to be taught. You get what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you got kids, right? Let me give you an example. So maybe, you having a tough day and your kids say, "Hey, what's up, Dad? How you doing?" And instead of always, "I'm all right," maybe send them to, "Hey, work was tough," and they ask, and and dap them up or however you talk to them, and have a, don't get deep, but have just enough that they know, Dad stresses out too, man. Like, this is not as easy, but I'm gonna make it work. So now they feel comfortable going, okay, I can do that, right? Like, so now when they go through something, they go, well, I might not totally open up. I might not totally break down and cry, but I'll be able to say, things are a little rough. And that's what I think can happen because, as much as we would want teachers or coaches or whomever to do it, and some of us do, there's some you got to
bet on yourself. Yeah, you got to bet on yourself. It's hard to bet on yourself sometimes when you're so uncomfortable in your own skin. Exactly. You can't even navigate those spaces.
Yeah, and we have to. And the thing is, and this is the point I was trying to move to, is, the one thing I want you to think about this. On COVID, one thing it did, it made us all slow down. It made us.
Facts.
Do you know there's gonna be people at the most time they've spent with their kids was during this pandemic. I tell people, like, as much as we want to say, okay, it's about running this, no, this is about life.
Right. So Jahidi White came on the show, and I asked him the question about music, and he said that music allowed him to go all over the world in his own neighborhood.
Yeah.
Talk about the influence and the impact of music in your life growing up. Sports Deli is sponsored by SportRx, the leader in sport prescription eyewear. You can find them online at sportrx.com, and don't forget to enter the code DELI10 at checkout for your special 10% discount. And now back to this incredible interview right here on the Sports Deli.
I'm gonna tell you something. When I was younger, there was times I would like Tupac would have some stuff out, and I'm just, I know this is gonna sound weird, but I remember it would be songs that it would be raps and songs that he would put out that it almost felt like he was looking at my life and then rapped it. I know it sounds, but it didn't.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So for me, it helped me go through things and handle things with a warrior's mentality. I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
yep.
It made me go. It made me.
For me, it was Public Enemy. For you, it was Tupac.
Oh yeah. It was like just life.
Yeah.
It's like you're going through stuff and you want to ask why, right? And you want to say, and here's the thing. When you're going through it and all these so-called bad things are happening, inside you have more. You know you can do better. You know you can overcome it. You know it, but you don't know how to make it come into reality. You don't know how to communicate that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes music helps you communicate. It's like a love song, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you don't know the words to say, but you hear that song, you're like, man, that's exactly what I want to say. Right? And then what you do back in the day, what we'll do is we might put it on our answer machine, the old answer machine, somebody call your phone, right? And that's the way we want. We didn't know how to say it, but this song could say it.
That's classic.
And to be honest with you, unfortunately, I think, some of the kids are not, they don't have those same types of songs that we used to have back in the day that really talked about what I would say, real stuff. And that's another thing. The one thing we did have is that even though we didn't talk about certain things, we had other ways of talking about it through music, through sports, through art and all that type of stuff. And nowadays you can't, you might not even get that.
Right. Fascinating stuff, man. I remember I said this to Jahidi every weekend. If there wasn't KRS-One and Run DMC, and then the sort of extrapolation of that, fashion trends and what people wore, top tens and shell toes, and then just what your memories involve music and just about everything that you did.
Yeah.
And rap especially was, it was LL and Kool Moe Dee going at it, and just fascinating stuff. That's awesome. So let me ask you, I've been to a Michigan football game, and the Big House is definitely something. Now you played at Texas Christian, right? LT was there, and I think you were a senior and he was a freshman. And then you've coached at UNLV, you've coached at LSU, so you've coached in 2 Power Fives and the Mountain West. And so, can you just talk about the difference? Because I'm sure you've been to football games, right? The kids go. Yeah. It's an experience. So just not only being in a Power Five, but in the Big Ten, and what it's like to be at a Michigan Ohio State football game.
Yeah. So the way I see it is like this: like when I was at LSU, the football games were like a big party.
Right.
So people started early in the morning. Most of the games are at night.
Yep.
A lot of them start the day before, and it's like a big party, right? And they're football fans, but the whole thing is part of the deal. At Ohio State, this is my own personal experience. At Ohio State, like, people really about the football.
Right.
They have a good time. You get what I'm saying? Like
football. Right? It's not all the other stuff.
Yeah, and it's there, but it's not. It's a little different. And then also, in Ohio State and Ohio State football is like a whole family culture. Here, everybody's Buckeyes.
Like, you've seen a lot of things in your life, and not many things blow your mind, but this whole big picture, everything under the umbrella of the Ohio State University, in some ways blows your mind.
Yeah, because I almost think you got to be from Ohio or went to Ohio State to get it.
I mean, I sort of get it because I love Michigan.
But it's like a cultural thing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
even bigger than LSU, which is obviously huge football. They won a national championship recently, and it's just a whole different world. How did the campus and the administration and the athletic staff and athletic director, et cetera, how did they support the student athletes? I know there was sort of a rough spell last year in the Big Ten in terms of playing fall sports during the pandemic, and then the murder of George Floyd. How was that to be a part of? Because you have the societal part, and then you have a bubble like a college campus. And so how was it internally in terms of how you felt supported, the players felt supported during that time? Sponsored by PSK. You can find them online at lids.com, pskcollective.com, tjmax.com, walmart.com, and now Kohl's department store at kohls.com. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports.
I mean, you got to think. And I mean, and I know it might sound like doing a pitch or like trying to protect my butt or whatever. But man, the reality is they was kind of ahead of everybody. Now, when you say, what does that mean? Well, I mean, you got to understand, the AD at Ohio State is Gene Smith. I mean, he's
right.
He's a black male, right? And he played football at Notre Dame. And then at the time when I came here, the school president was Dr. Drake, another black male, extremely smart and proactive. The commissioner right now, So what I'm trying to say is, it's like, I mean, Jesse Owens with Ohio State in the 1930s, man.
Yeah.
I mean, in the South, they was bombing churches and in schools.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to integrate in the 60s. So I'm just saying, I think, are you getting my point? I think it's a temperature there. It's a consciousness.
They understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling I got. So Ohio State in particular, and most schools, UNLV was great, LSU was great, but Ohio State is really and this goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's really a student athlete and student first friendly place. They truly put, from my viewpoint, the student and the student athletes first.
It's good to hear, though, because I coached at the college level for 23 years.
Yeah,
and there's just certain things that were never talked about, and so it's nice to know. I think it's reassuring because one of my former players I sent D1 when I was a JUCO coach, and she has now started her own company where she's helping young women feel more empowered because of the pitfalls that happen when you're at those Power 5 schools or the Division I schools. And she had an eating disorder, never told me. She went through stuff, and I just wish to God she would have told me. And so, like you said, to your point earlier, they're not always going to tell you, but the more that you have things in place to make them feel safe, to be able to talk about these things or deal with these things, even if it doesn't have to do with, their times, then they're going to be more, apt to, want to deal with some of the things that they might be going through. I want to ask you this question before I get to the rapid fire. You talked about Gene Smith, and your athletic director. He's not only known at the Ohio State University, but as a commissioner, and he's big time. And you're a person of color, you're an African American, you're a black head coach. And so we have issues in this space in the NFL, and until recently with the NBA, they've done some good things there. But can you talk about the importance of having black men and women in leadership positions, and why do you think that there's still an issue with bridging that gap?
I think as the world becomes more diverse, and as we know now that that women or minorities are competent and have the skill set, I think some of these things might start to open up. Like we weren't able to get to the table. Okay, now once you get to the table, then you got to present that you have the skill set or the ability or you're competent or whatever, right? What we've learned is to start recognizing our biases.
How we get past the initial biases so that you can get a seat at the table, that I think is still the hard part in a lot of ways, because there are not a lot of systems that allow for that to happen.
That's true.
So that's my biggest issue, and my observation after listening is that, you know, Tom Brady doesn't come out and say Black Lives Matter. Jerry Jones doesn't come out and say Black Lives Matter. You know, there's not enough white allies, because at this point, it's not about African Americans educating people and talking about it. There has to be more white people that talk about it, because it's in my eyes, we've been the ones that have been complicit and have not allowed those seats at the table. And so we need to do a better job of educating ourselves and being an ally.
Yeah, but you can see that because you're from Detroit.
Yeah, but I didn't have the clarity that I do now since the murder of George Floyd and the outpouring of support from white people, and the stories that I hear about LeBron being afraid for his kids and Doc Rivers crying on the podium. And these are powerful Black men that are still afraid and talking about this stuff because it's still real to them. And so I can't imagine how real it must be to kids that aren't in the spotlight, that have to deal with this stuff still, even though life is better in a lot of ways. It's not also.
Let me give you an example. So I was having a discussion with a friend who was white. This was years ago. And he couldn't grasp the concept that police would stop me or anybody like me for no reason. And we kept arguing. I couldn't understand how this
Not
guy
for no reason, it's because you're Black. Exactly.
But see, but in his head, he couldn't imagine that. And it was hard for me. I'm like, why this dude can't see it? He was a friend of mine. I felt he was a guy that had no race, none of that. But then it hit me. And this guy's whole life, entire life, himself, he's never been stopped by a police officer for no reason. And he don't know anyone. His family, no one he knows police has never stopped him or them ever just for no reason. So he can't even fathom the idea that it happens. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Because he's never, so that's what happens. Like some people, because of their life trajectory, it's hard for them to believe that, okay, the police would do it because they never had that experience ever.
Right.
And not only have they never had it, nobody they know has ever had it. They even talked about having it. So in their mind, when they driving down the freeway and they see the police stop some Black guy, they thinking he must have been speeding, because the police don't stop you for no reason. You see? So I had to figure that out. Like, okay, now I'm seeing what's happening. They've never had these experiences before. Whereas almost every Black person knows, not all of them, but they've had it. So that's what's happening. It's like some people have never had certain experiences, so it's not a reality to them.
Ooh, man. Not necessarily some of the conversations you're going to have with your players all the time. That's for darn sure.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But they're learning. They're definitely learning through life experiences and just seeing, with your leadership and things like that. And I did want to ask you about your Olympic experiences because, man, I know time flies, but especially the second one.
Yeah.
How incredible was that to look back on it now and just be like, whew, the training, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the injuries, just, the opening ceremonies. I mean, you just must have a flood of, when you stop and just sit back and look back sometimes, just must be a great feeling. Sponsored by City Lokes, CITYLOCS. You can find them online at citylokes.com, where you can go and make your own personalized license plate hats. They're so cool. You got to check them out. And don't forget to enter the code The Sports Deli at checkout for your special 10% discount. And now back to this incredible interview right here in the Sports Deli.
Example, this podcast right here, right? Let's say you really believe or you think you can get up to 800 million viewers. Yeah.
Okay.
But let's say you think you can be in the top 10 in the world.
Right.
But you don't know how you're going to do it. But you think you can, and you're going to work toward it. And you've tried for years and years, and you failed, and you tried, and you failed, and you tried, and finally you hit it. Through all of this, with people telling you can't, that's kind of what it's like. It's like having this goal that's so outlandish that the odds are against you to accomplish it. And you really believe it when nobody else believes, and you fail and you fail and you fail. And not only you fail, you gotta wait 4 more years to even try to accomplish it again. And then you hit it. So you can't the thing is, you can't get that feeling nowhere else.
Mm-mm. Well, it's amazing because you're a football player too. To have pivoted the way you did is just amazing. And then you talk about divine intervention or whatever it is, man, just unbelievable.
But we all have that.
And it's always a little bit different. I don't like to just talk about sports. I like to talk about life. So much love, much respect. And let me ask you one question before you got to go. If you could have 5 people at your dinner table, anybody ever, sports, non-sports, past or present, who would you want at your dinner table?
My stepfather, who passed when I was a senior in high school.
Right. And that changed the course of your life, right? You were more focused after that.
Yeah, because I knew life was real then.
Yeah.
You know, I knew like nobody's coming to save me. Yeah.
That's one.
My grandmother.
Wow.
That's a really, really tough question. Maybe like somebody like
Malcolm X.
He would be up there. Like maybe Moses.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, maybe the last 2 are Lumumba or somebody like that.
Wow. Who was your favorite athlete growing up of all time?
John Elway.
Wow. Really? More than MJ? More than
I was a huge Elway fan.
Wow.
Do what?
I
think he froze a little bit.
That's fascinating. Man, he would have never been in my top 100. That is unbelievable.
Oh, John Elway was like, he was my favorite. Yeah, easily.
Wow, that's cool. Whoever crossed paths with you there is certainly lucky to have you a part of their lives, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 years with a redshirt year.
Well, I appreciate it. We'll do this again. I appreciate it for having me.
All right, man. You got it. Yeah. Thank the kids and the family for me, man. Much love, much respect.
All right, man.
All right. Talk soon. All right,
Take it
bye-bye. All right. Peace. The real KD, ladies and gentlemen, right there. Man, so honored that we were able to share space with the head cross-country coach at The Ohio State University, Khadevis Robinson. And man, it's always interesting to do your prep work when you are getting ready for a podcast. But then when you actually have these conversations with them, you just really don't know them until you talk to them. I just know the impact that coaches had in my life. And I never really had deep conversations with my coaches, but just the mere fact that they were dedicating their time, volunteering, taking me out socially. But in college, I didn't have a great experience with my coach, to be quite honest with you. I thought he was an asshole, and I still do. And I don't think he was a great coach. He got lucky with some good players who came together and banded together for themselves, because they certainly didn't do it for him. And it's too bad. But he was a young coach at the time. So in the early days, I give him a pass, but later on in his career, I don't give him a pass. And so there'll be another time where I talk about that and the lessons, maybe, if he ever listens to this, that maybe he'll be able to take from that, and maybe he'll be somewhat remorseful for some of the behaviors that he engaged in that were not what I would call coach-like. And I was complicit as one of his assistant coaches. And I finally stood up to him before I left. And when I was coaching on the East Coast in Baltimore at Goucher College, and the athletic director at the time backed him instead of me. and I left. So call it philosophical differences, call it whatever you want, but I couldn't be a part of that toxic environment anymore. And so with that being said, point I was trying to make was in part that Khadevis Robinson is not only a phenomenal coach, a world champion, an Olympic runner. He brings out the inner Olympian in all of his student athletes and coaches and anyone else that he crosses paths with. So it was truly an honor to have him on the show today. And I hope you enjoyed it. I just feel like it's important to hear these stories and experiences and, what successful people do to get to where they are. And I think some of the conversations that we had about talking about certain things that maybe we never used to talk about before is so important. And hopefully that will continue not only in sport, but in society, because it's important that we have a shift in some of the priorities in society with our families, in education. And with that being said, for Dr. J and Coach K, I'm Hootie Hoot. I am the host and producer of the Sports Deli Podcast. Truly been an honor to share space with you. Please share this information with anyone else that you feel like might enjoy the podcast. And you can find me on TikTok now, at Mike Hootner, and on Instagram at Mike Hootner, doing lives, posting various things about social injustice, equality, the podcast, fun stuff about my dogs. In 2 weeks, we've gone from 7 followers on TikTok to over 1,000. And it's been a fascinating experience. So just trying to continue to evolve and pay it forward. Black Lives Matter. Stop the Asian hate. Stop the bullying. Talk to your local politicians about people that are in jail for nonviolent offenses or for things that they did not do. Remember, it takes a village. And until next time, much love. Peace.